Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in Richland. Dr. John Boyle is accused of killing his wife, Noreen.
The 12-year-old son finally took the stand.
The boy confidently told the jury it was his decision to testify against his father.
I heard a scream. I heard a thud. It was about this
We,
loud.
the jury, find the defendant guilty.
I decided at an early age that our trauma should not be what defines us. It's what we choose to do with it that does. I'm here to share my unique perspective on true crime, mental health, society, and popular culture, albeit with a slight sense of humor. I'm Collier Landry, and welcome to my show.
I'm not sure if there's going to be a winner in the way that you and I think about justice for O'Keefe and for his family, and even for the community, and even for Karen, because as someone who works towards justice, I'm for justice no matter who it's for or against. And that's always the bottom line. Who it's for or who it's against, if it's justice, then somebody's going to pay and somebody's going to pray.
Mover Nation, what's going on? Wherever you may be and however you may be watching or listening, thanks for making me a part of your day. This program wouldn't be what it is without you guys, so thank you. If you would like to support the show financially on Patreon, YouTube memberships, buy me a coffee, I have the links to all that stuff in the show notes of today's episode. So speaking of what's going on, what is going on with this Karen Read case? Guys, we're going to talk about it again today, since the Karen Read case is dark, because the adopted children of John O'Keefe are going to take the witness stand, which is something I know a little bit about for sure. And, you know, as you guys know, full disclosure, I've been bringing on a couple of guests. My guest today is Sunny Slaughter. She's fantastic. But one of the things is that I am still playing catch up a lot with this case, and I've been learning a lot about it in the last few days. And as I always like to say, you know, look, I don't have all the answers. I haven't watched all the trial. I know some of you guys you're really into that, and I love that. But I'm just I'm just playing catch up a lot of this. So I bring people on like Sunny or like Todd McGee last week. I'm bringing other guests on to learn more about this. So as I always like to say, I am not a lawyer. I am not a psychologist. I do not work in law enforcement. I am just a guy who has been through a lot of shit. So this is the perspective that I approach with you guys. And I find this whole thing fascinating, being, you know, both the son of a perpetrator and the victim. And it's a harrowing case. There's so much to it. So my guest today is Sunny Slaughter. So Sunny Slaughter is a law enforcement and litigation expert and former law enforcement instructor with the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. She's also a legal analyst for Court TV, Law and Crime Network, and Scripps News. So full disclosure, we recorded this interview last night, and I have put it together for you guys to enjoy here on the live. That way we make sure there's no lagging in time and everything. But it's a fantastic interview, and we are going to cover both sides of this and look at the whole picture, look at a lot of the conjecture, the vitriol, the venom, compare it to certain other things. There is going to be a longer form version of this on my podcast tomorrow, my audio podcast, and also here on YouTube with some snippets for you guys, because it's a great conversation that I have with Sunny. She has done a fantastic TED Talk. If you guys haven't heard her story is also very, very heavy, and I will have her back on the program as well, because she's just an amazing individual, and I really bonded with her and loved her so much. So I look forward to hearing more from her on the show. So we just kind of start with just the effects of what this is having, not only on the community. And here we're going to get into it, and then we're going to cover all the different things with law enforcement, how they've botched stuff, but what happened with Karen yesterday. One of the hospital workers or medical examiners, they talked about her blood alcohol level, something that I wasn't aware of. That's been brought up. This Brian Higgins guy also. There's just so much. So we're going to cover all of this, and it's going to be great. So I can't wait for you guys to check it out. Marisol is very anxiously waiting in her little cage next to me. Mover Nation, here we go. Let's get into it.
People kind of get focused, laser focused on one part of the story, one person in the story, and then they forget all about the family,
Oh, do they ever?
the perpetrators. And I, like you know, I've worked in courtrooms and navigated horrific homicide and had to navigate with the victim's family, but also remind them that the perpetrator's family, that they are feeling all of this too. And you know, when you're in a courtroom or you're leaving the courtroom and there are two sides, and the two sides of pain is what it really is. Two sides of devastation. And then we forget that, you know, the person that might still be alive, you know, everybody's rooting for them. And the person that is deceased feels like they have nothing left.
Yeah. And it's, you know, the thing that I was so laser focused on, even as a child, after going through everything, I was like, we're so focused on, you know, the bad guy goes to jail, you know, the victim is dead, the state gets its restitution, the gavel hits, and we say next.
The visceral reaction among the community. However, the community and law enforcement, there is something there. There is a there. But the trolls and the people are just, woo!
And I'm not saying that people shouldn't want to see justice for John O'Keefe or want to see justice for Karen Reed and see her freed or what have you, whatever side you're on. But they latch onto it for the wrong reasons. It's because they hate the government. They don't trust the police. They want something to pick the hornet's nest.
Yes, and then stand back and watch everyone get stung.
Yeah.
And from a law enforcement perspective, when I think about national security and when I think about domestic terrorism and threats, I think about individuals who do just that. They kick the hornet's nest and they don't serve, you know, we say the words misinformation and disinformation, and people just hear them as words, but they are actually fuel. So they're the gasoline and they're the little match that gets lit, and then things just go off. And the politics of when you think about everything that we're watching right now, even in the Karen Reed's case, when you think about the politics of the pressure and the people and canceling and silencing people, all of those things coming together create the crisis that we are experiencing in America today. And the Karen Reed case, clearly one of the most interesting cases, I think, that we are watching evolve, in addition to, not to get into the politics, to what is happening with Trump. They're like equally measured when it comes to rhetoric and violence, except for, you know, one is a former president, one is a woman who means, and then a community who is desperate and devastated and like vicious. Some people are really vicious in there. And I don't know if there's a side, but I'm concerned that when this case is over, then what do they do? What does the community do?
It's so interesting you said that, because that's what I was thinking last night. You don't want to see someone go to prison for something that they didn't do.
Right.
You also have to consider, okay, so if she gets acquitted, do we just forget about John O'Keefe? I feel like there's so many different sides. I feel like there's the people that think she's guilty, the people that think she's innocent, and people that think there's a conspiracy, and there might even be another side. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting justice. Justice is not putting someone in prison for something they didn't do. Justice is not exonerating someone and then not trying to find the perpetrators that actually committed the crime. And just saying, oh, well, okay, well, we screwed up. We put things in, we gathered evidence in brown paper bags and red Solo cups. So sorry. I mean, how did we get here is my biggest question.
Okay. So when I look at this case, we got here because law enforcement, they did not investigate this case. This is a failure, a critical failure of law enforcement processes, practices, accountability, reliability, and complacency when it came to investigations. There is some very real concern among law enforcement professionals who have watched this case, including myself and others, state, federal, and ongoing, about what was not done and the things that were done in this particular case as it relates to law enforcement.
Sure.
And that's where we can't even understand or roll back the clock on what happened in the case properly, because it requires it to be, when you arrive on the scene of a crime, for you to be meticulous in gathering the evidence, which is why process matters so much. So you can then tell the story of what you think is necessary for a prosecution. So there's so many layers on that side. And then because the defense is really good at what they are doing in muddying the waters, which is what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
And just so you'll know, I actually work prosecution and defense cases. And I actually work a lot of defense cases as the expert. And not that they call me to the stand, but they need me to say, oh, this was like a whole gumshoe act here. And so what they're doing is gumming up the fact that they know the investigation is weak, which then makes the prosecution's case very weak. And I'm not sure if there's going to be a winner in the way that you and I think about justice for
Sure.
O'Keefe and for his family, and even for the community, and even for Karen, because as someone who works towards justice, I'm for justice no matter who is for or against. And that's always the bottom line. Who it's for or who it's against, if it's justice, then somebody's going to pay and somebody's going to pray their way through it. And right now, the Karen Reed case is it's got a lot of holes. I don't know if she's guilty, but I don't also know if she's innocent based on everything that we've seen. I do know that the investigation is so flawed. I do believe that the prosecution may have overcharged because of her. When you think about her blood alcohol, hours, so many hours later, that it was still that high.
What was her blood alcohol level? I don't know. And I as someone who quit drinking a long time ago, I pointed out, I was like, this is alcohol.
It's a lot of alcohol. I don't remember the exact number, but it was still well over the legal limit.
Got it.
Hours later. So, and when I'll say I'm from New Jersey, so a lot of people that don't know, and you're from Ohio. So when people don't understand weather conditions and how that plays out in the Northeast, and what
Yes.
it looks like, you know, when we think about snow, when we think about coverage, when we think about clearing. Now, when I lived in New Jersey, and years ago, and when I grew up, but say in 2003, before I left New Jersey, prior to that, we had a storm. Our neighbor had a snowplow on the front of his vehicle for our street. And I lived in the city. So he could do our street, but you know, we had to park a certain way. So when you look at the video of where they said the truck with the snowplow was and what was going on, there was an advisory put out. So were they was people in the driveway? Were they on the road? How much snow was out? All of those things matter when it comes to driving conditions. And I'm a former EMT. So when you think about the EMTs, the paramedics said it was very dangerous for them to drive, right? Now, paramedics, law enforcement, unlike regular individuals, there is a course to teach you driving, defensive driving, weather conditions. So if they said that it was bad weather and they were having a hard time, which means it takes you longer to get there, that means it was really bad weather. And so law enforcement. So all of these things come into play. And Collier, I'm not sure what is going to happen in this case. And more importantly, I'm just not sure whether John O'Keefe, the victim, and even his children, because court is dark today now. So we did this morning, and then court went dark this afternoon, and it'll be dark for, I think, the next couple of days, because the children are going to take the stand, and they're not going to show any of their testimony, which is good, because these kids have done, they've been through a lot. They lost both of their parents, and then they lost another parent. I mean, 3 parents in your life. You are not even like 15, and you've already lost 3 parents?
Yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
It's also interesting, you're talking about the court going dark for the children. Obviously, I was televised and I was on the witness stand as a child.
Yes.
Which to me, in hindsight, doesn't bother me. And I was so determined to get justice for my mother, I didn't care. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't thinking about I didn't even realize there were TV cameras in there. I didn't care about any of that. I cared about that man sitting across from me who I knew murdered my mother. You know what I mean? Exactly. But I do think about the way the cases are treated now, and I think it's good because, this will come out later. They'll, they need to move on their lives. And yes, 3 parents, the original mother and father, both to cancer, I believe, and then John O'Keefe, who, for all intents and purpose, it literally seemed like a very good stand-up guy to take in his niece and nephew as his own. As a single man, as a single parent, and to rise to that occasion, that speaks a lot to his character. And I don't know if people assassinate his character as well. I have no idea. I haven't read a lot of this online stuff towards him, but I do. That's what makes this even worse, is that it seems like both people in this case were people that were of good, decent character. For the most part, we all make mistakes, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So they haven't said, actually, John O'Keefe doesn't get as much play in this case. Like, we don't talk about him, his character, and we don't really talk about the man in the way he's almost silenced, because Karen has taken, now she's the defendant, but she has taken up so much air and space in this. And all of the other things, that the proclivity of intimacy regarding her, and now the guy that was on the witness stand earlier, the state trooper guy.
Is that Brian Higgins? Higgins?
Yeah, and them kissing, not kissing, and so all of that has come into play. But all of those things that are distractions from what really happened to John O'Keefe, and he seemed like a very decent man, stand up. Now she, on the other hand, there was a lot of talk. Now his family didn't have anything negative to say about her initially. On the stand, his brother didn't, his brother's wife didn't, none of that really. They thought she was nice, but you hear that the kids who were present knew that they were fighting a lot. There was a lot, but then in a relationship, when you are having disagreements as the adults, it depends on what the kids hear, how old they are, how they comprehend that, whether that really is a disagreement. But she was having a lot of angst with the kids. And for him, he needed someone in his life that did not have angst about his niece and nephew, because he was standing up for them. They had suffered a loss. And if you don't have that for yourself, that is different. And I agree with you. Taking the witness stand, you were very young. And in my own daughter's case, I made the decision for her to take the witness stand at 8. I also did, we also had a pretty close courtroom too. We had those that were in there, and then the DA's office made sure almost all of them that were available came over to be present, to keep her safe, feeling safe, and and all of those things. I wasn't in there except for when I was testifying, and I was not a good witness. Oh my gosh. And a lot of times people don't know how it is to be on the witness stand and to be a witness until you've actually done it. And when it was my daughter, oh my God, I was not a good witness. I was not a good witness. It's not that I didn't know the truth. I was parenting and all that stuff.
And you were also married to the perpetrator. And
yes, can you believe it? Oh,
there's a lot that goes on. It's very
the dynamics.
I feel for these children too, because again, they've lost 3 parents now, and they're and I believe these kids are they're teenagers. And look, teenagers are different than when we were younger. You know, they have Facebook, they have all the phones and everything, so they are probably seeing all of this. And so, I mean, I hope not, but how do you keep that stuff from them?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's so hard to protect kids these days from CSA, or CSM, let alone, being able to see the news and the conjecture and the tweets and the this and the that and the direct. I'm sure that they're really confused. I mean, my heart just breaks.
And they go to school with children in that community or near that community, and it's so volatile and it's so horrific across all mediums, right? But also, they at once time had a relationship with Karen.
Who did?
The kids had a relationship with Karen. She was in the home. Karen Reed spent the night. They went on trips. So she was also a big part of their lives. And now they're having to take the witness stand. So I don't think people understand, they pick a side when it's really not a side as much as it is evidence, facts, and truth and justice.
And the conflict, the cognitive dissonance that these children are going through, if they have the connection to her, and that connection of seeing her in the actual courtroom is also still a connection to John, because she was with him. So they're told that she's guilty, I'm sure, or they're feeling a certain way about things, and they miss their father, they miss their mother and father that they've lost, and then they miss this father figure who stepped up for them at the most critical moment in their lives. But then the person who had the last connection, who was essentially the last person to see him alive, is right in front of them. And there's that connection too. So you talk about cognitive dissonance, or just the feelings that they're going to have to, the emotions that they have to suppress, or just what's going through their head. I mean, I know, I've been there. I know. I know exactly what that feels like. It's horrific.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how unraveled your life can become when there is a crime so intimate in your life, and how people who don't have those direct experiences don't necessarily know how to explain it. I know with my own children, I made a lot of mistakes as a parent because I was not a single parent. I was a solo parent after this because there was no one else. And I was also in pain. So when you have your own stuff that you are dealing with, your own grief, your own guilt, your own anger, your own resentment, your own cognitive dissonance to try to get to make understanding, okay, how could this happen? Thinking about what role did I play? How did even his parents, whoever they are with right now, are going through their own set of waves of things and trying to parent and trying to process. And people always think at the end of the verdict, when there's a verdict, that's the end. And I always say, that's the end when the cameras go off. That's not the end, because there are years and years of appeals and contact and controversy and reminders, like you're going good for 1 minute for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The next thing you know, you're getting a call from the prosecutor's office saying, well, now let me tell you, this just happened. Because I will never forget when I got that call, I was like, what happened?
I will never forget when I got that call too.
It's just like, and you're thinking, and yeah, everybody thinks it's over. And see, all of the people like all of the risers like Turtle Boy and others, and people who are so ingrained in the case right now. See, they've already moved on. They're not there to watch when you get the constant thread of threat of something else not happening. And even those that testified, the witnesses for the prosecution, and the McCabe, Jen McCabe, who's her husband, and they said they were getting attacked. That's residue for all of them. Their names, faces, testimony are always out there, and people are always judging them. And then others have moved on, but their lives will never be the same. None of them. This case is the holy hell for all of those. We have John O'Keefe, we have Karen, we have what people might want to call their camps and who's on whose side. And then you have all of this collateral damage in the middle.
We don't see that. It's again, like we talked about earlier, the judge, gavel hits, we say next, and we don't look at all of the things that you have to live with for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And then if there's the cases on, like you said, appeal, it's every 2 years of this, or my dad's on parole, my dad's up for parole again this year. All these things happen, and you have to relive things, and then people will ask questions, and then it was like, what was this like? And then somebody's making another documentary, or then they're doing this, or, and it's just all these things keep resurfacing, and it's not, and you are going good, and you are going along good. And I do remember being a teenager, and I was going along good, and then they're like, oh, we don't think that's your mom's body. Can you give us DNA? This is all the evidence that's been presented because this has been exposed by the media. And I went and gave my DNA sample to verify whether it was her body or not. Because then I'm like, well, maybe that wasn't her. Is she still? Because not only it wasn't about my father being innocent, but it was like, is she still alive? Is there a chance? Are you telling me there's a chance my mother's still alive? And I have to go give this, and I'm going to go give this DNA evidence? So those are the things that they don't think about. It just doesn't occur to people of the real impacts of these types of crimes, Yeah.
And what about if Karen Reed gets off? So say she is,
sure,
there is reasonable doubt, and then she is not charged or convicted, and then the children see her later.
Yeah. Or she writes a book and makes millions of dollars, and whether that's justified or not, but then there's a grudge. Oh, well, she got away with murder, so she wrote this. Again, may or may not be true, right?
Right.
But you know what I mean? There's this perception. I mean, you even think about somebody like a defendant. How do they go on and live their life? What does that look like? If she's acquitted, and if she is even a step further, if she is innocent and she's acquitted, and she's like, well, good, I didn't do anything. And then she has to live under this veil of scrutiny the rest of her life. Because it's not like this is a little small case. Everyone knows about this. It keeps growing. This trial is supposedly going to go on for another 8 weeks or something.
No, it should be. I hope not. It should be wrapping in a week or two, or I don't know.
All right. Somebody had said 4 weeks, 8 weeks. I don't know.
I mean, it's a lot of weeks.
It's a long trial for sure.
Because the defense still has not. Oh.
And it's just, and what does she have to live through? So you have all of these people, and again, it's this interesting side to these scenarios where, you want to be on Team O'Keefe or Team Reed or team, or team botched investigation and police corruption, right? But then you have to look at that. These are real people. These are real people whose lives have been completely turned upside down. It's like the puzzle was all finished. There's a couple pieces left. There's 1,000 pieces, and somebody came in and went and hit the table, and everybody's going, what? And you talk about what happens at the end. That's when the real work begins, because then you have to and these poor children who've lost everything, not once, but twice. And their lives have been turned upside down. And as someone who lived through that, they're always going to be known by that, whether they like it or not, that's why I moved as far away as possible. Nobody knows me. I'm going to start a new life. You know what I mean? And I've come back full circle. I made a film, but it turns your life upside down. And with the way the media is now, the way that social media is, and people can find you and people can message you directly, it doesn't matter. It's your life is over as you know it. And it's really tough to come back from.
And people always want to ask inappropriate questions.
Always.
I remember when people, because a lot of times people say, well, how is it that you couldn't know? I said, well, those that know me know that if I knew that, I would be the one incarcerated. And it took a lot not to be the one incarcerated.
Sure.
And then people want you to be a certain way, but they don't know. They don't understand the dynamics. So when I think about John O'Keefe's parents, right?
Yep.
So they lost one son. Then they lost another son.
Yeah.
And the way that the courtroom is set up, I was like, we knew the courtroom was going to be small, but Karen Reed's table is this way. O'Keefe's family is this way. Her family is behind her. I think that they should have put his family behind her and her family alongside her, because they have a dark.
Yeah.
You don't think that.
Yeah, that's terrible.
That it matters, but the constant direct visual, they are literally sitting there looking at her team all day long. Facial expressions, all of those things. It's just, what does this play out? Our criminal justice system has some very unique dynamics in how we see things. And I think podcasts like yours and all of the others and watching the television and court TV and all of those shows and Law and Crime Network, one of the things that they do, even though it's painful, and when they have, you have people like me come on and you can tell your story. One of the things that it does is it shines a light, a reality, because see, we can talk from truth and reality, and it exposes the deep flaws and the well-meaning progress that we have made in our criminal justice system. And I don't think people pay attention enough, because when people see something on social media, if they're not paying attention, and if it's a lie, then they can take that and run with it, because they haven't looked at it long enough. They haven't studied. They haven't heard like our conversation. They haven't heard others' conversations that can give them a different lens. You and I can look at this water bottle and we can see all sides of it and through it. And sometimes people can only see this particular label.
Yep.
And they get stuck there and they don't look at all of the other things. But I think your show and others, your story, telling your stories, creating the films, all of those give us an opportunity to share our journey, which is painful. But it is necessary for some of us to do it, not all of us. I don't think everyone should talk, which is why my kids don't do what I do. And, I had to tell them, okay, I know this is really hard, but I'm actually going to talk about this out loud, like all the bad parts of our story. And my oldest daughter, the direct victim, she was like, I don't know. But I said, it's part of the purpose that I have. I know it hurts you. It hurt all of us. But I just feel like it's something that I got to do. And now everybody's there like, okay, Mom, we're proud of you. I said, I'm going to, but I do try to shield them, which I think is when we talk about the kids, and you already know this because you have had to be sheltered and shielded in certain ways, but then you were exposed in so many other ways. like the children in this case, in the O'Keefe case, not showing them on camera right now, but we already know that they're exposed. People know who they are in this town.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing. It's a small town community. I mean, actually, Karen Reed is from Mansfield, but there's, I guess, a Mansfield, Massachusetts, or I'm from Mansfield, Ohio, which is super ironic. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, wow. But yes, and you were talking about earlier, and not to talk about my own story, I'm neurodivergent, so I often try to share my experiences with other people because it makes sense to me. Some people are like, why do you share this? I'm like, because it's how I relate to people. It's me sharing my story. But one of the things is I remember you were talking about the inappropriate questions. I remember being cornered in a Walmart, like the laundry detergent aisle for like 35, 40 minutes. And it was before I was adopted. I was in foster care, but I was transitioning over to the home where I would end up staying, until I was 18. And I had it was winter and I had this coat on, and the woman was like playing with my zipper, and she was asking me all of these questions about my father, about what could have happened, what happened with it. And I'm just such a nice guy that I just was trying to answer her questions. But I remember when becoming my little brother, walking back and forth, like just to like try to monitor, like what is going on, like just to see. And like they've cornered him in the smelly detergent. It was one of those things that you're just there in that moment, and you're so uncomfortable, and you're like, I just want to go pick out a G.I. Joe figure. That's all I want to do, and go home. I don't want to talk to you about this, but what do you say? And they're just, and you're visualizing it, the smell of the detergent. She's zipping the zipper, the sound of the zipper, then these intrusive questions. It's wild. And that's what I think about with these kids, not only being on the witness stand, facing the person who was the last person to see alive, their father figure who stepped up for them in their life, but also all of the people that are going to completely, dismantle boundaries and ignore boundaries with these kids moving forward. And it's so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard for them to protect themselves and for other people to protect them. I don't wish it on anyone.
I think you sharing your story and how we're having this conversation is uniquely important, because we can talk about all of the parameters of the case, but then being able to explain, when people see this, they understand that we have a very unique lens. And I'm saying we because we're having this conversation, but there are others who might understand, okay, I kind of like know what this is because this something happened to me. And those people might not be able to do what we're doing right now. This is not easy to talk about your stuff, putting a TED Talk out and you putting your TED Talk out and talk, people are always look, well, are you sure? And, people ask you all kinds of things. And I was like, and you really have to garner some tough skin. But when you're young, you are very vulnerable. To see, you and I aren't vulnerable in the same way that we were all of these years ago, even though I was an adult. But I was a parent and I was the mama bear over my children and having to see, we're not in that stage anymore.
No.
See, we can fight back now and we can say things and we can control the narrative. And I can just tell people, get away, get out of my face. And that was a dumb question. Okay. And when you asked me, in your questionnaire, you said, is there anything that's off topic? No. Because I think there are a lot of things that people need to know that they don't know, you and I know, and that we can help them navigate this case. Because this case is, it's got a lot. It's got a lot.
It's got a lot of pain. It has a lot of people impacted. And it has people on both sides of the aisle just raging, and really, like you said, gasoline, matches, all of those things. It's already hard enough, but being under this circumstance, it's really tough. So getting back actually to the facts of the case, and I think in our conversation is so important, but what are some of the things that have stood out to you? Because I know you talk about this on other shows and platforms that are really going to affect the potential outcome for both sides.
I think the fact that we still don't know what happened to him exactly. We don't know. There are the scratches on his arms and the condition of his body and his face, how did that happen? We don't know that. And those are very inconsistent with her potentially backing into him. Even a dog that has not materialized. So the condition of his physical body is still very much a question mark, like what actually happened, not who did it, but what happened all together. Like it was cold and snowy out in bad weather. So how did he get those scratches? Where was his clothes, his jacket? Now, that the EMTs talked about how you cut, and there's actually a certain way that you do that to cut clothes off. When you're trained to do that, you cut clothes off. And so, but how did he get those scratches that way? And there are no photographs. I have not seen any photograph of the condition of his clothes.
That's interesting.
Because you could still see, because the cuts are very specific. So they wouldn't have been dragging. So you should have still been able to see when they cut the clothes to warm his body, some of the condition of the sleeves of the jacket, because they should not have cut up the sleeve that way. It would have been, they usually teach you straight up, cross outward, that way. And even if they did cut, you would be able to determine the cut of the scissors from whatever other damage that it was. So I have not seen the clothes yet. I have seen no photographs, no indication, no anything about the condition of the clothes that he should have been wearing or anything. We've seen, well, they might have seen it, but the photographs of the clothes is something that we could have seen, if not the condition of the body. But we heard about the swelling of the face and that there was some potential argument. So the fact that John O'Keefe and Karen were on their way, and John was talking via text, or someone was talking via text, I'm saying someone now, to Jen in the house, because they had all arrived at the house and it was taking them longer and he never came in the house. So, if I'm telling you, if I'm like Collier, okay, this is how you get to my house and I'm expecting you, or if you're going to one of my friend's house and I'm expecting you and you don't arrive, I'm like, and I'm texting you like, where are you? I'm calling you like, where are you? And he wasn't reportedly driving, but no one ever talked to him on the phone. It was just text. So in the time frame, what happened?
So so if they were expecting him at the house, are you saying that nobody reached out to him to say, hey, John, where are you? What's going on?
Jen did. She reached out via text and she was talking via text and she gave directions via text. And she said she looked out the window, but no one spoke to him on the phone.
Interesting.
So that's why I said he reportedly was texting back, but it was taking them forever to get there. They all just left the one place and it's still taking him this long time to get there.
And he was riding with Karen Reed. Is that the?
Yes. And she reportedly was driving.
And she was very intoxicated, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very. So what? No one saw him in the house, according to what they say. She says she dropped him off. But when she dropped him off, did she see him go in the house? Are there snow tracks from where she dropped him off going in the house? Like, where is that? And I always thought this was strange that, where are the cameras at all these people's houses? Nobody had any cameras or anything in the neighborhood.
Yeah, you think about the Michelle Troconis trial, right? And that was, and that was a big part of the evidence that they had was, Fotis Doulos' car, her car, from other neighbors' houses, the chimney with the smoke, the whole thing was all these, and I always say.
And that was a high profile and high dollar case. Now that neighborhood, they had cameras everywhere. This neighborhood, Now, I'm in an apartment. I've got cameras throughout.
There's cameras everywhere. I live in an apartment. There's cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody has cameras. Ubers have cameras. Cars have backup cameras. There's cameras everywhere.
And when I'm doing an investigation, and if I'm leading an investigation or I'm doing the expert witness on a case, I am tracking where a person goes, right? So I want to know what route they went. I had a missing persons case, and I said, okay, so what route does the person usually take? I have people looking at cameras because there are cameras at the banks, there are cameras at stores, there are cameras at gas stations. So all along the route, I'm checking cameras, and I'm like, okay, how did this person? Now, this was a country area in Alabama, but I was like, there are a lot of cameras everywhere.
Boston is a metropolitan city. Hell, the team's heading to the finals, NBA finals. You know, it's a big city.
And I've actually trained law enforcement there. I've actually been to the police department to train. It was years ago for Homeland Security. But yeah, I did training in Boston. Like, what is going on with this police department?
Yeah, and of course, this stirs up the theory, rather, that law enforcement is covering something up. So are they covering up something that happened to John O'Keefe, or are they just covering up the fact that they really screwed up big time and really botched the police work? Like you said, the gumshoe work. What do you think?
I'm thinking more along the lines that they botched up the case, or that there were a number of people that were involved in some other kind of stuff that was not appropriate. You know, the getting rid of the phones. It takes a lot. So I used to do RICO trials. I worked for the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement. We are all about the RICO, all about organized crime. So when you understand how conspiracies and organized criminal activity works, you don't want everybody to know everything. So the smallest group of people might know about how things are attached. But then there has to be some coordination between. I didn't find any coordination between the emergency response and law enforcement, because that would require every single person to cover up, from the forensic all the way down to the people doing the transport and all of that. None of that makes sense to me. In a conspiracy, whatever happened at the house, I mean, John didn't seem like he had enemies like that in the police department. Nobody's even asked, was he working on a particular case? Now, you know, when you have undercover, when someone's working undercover, then you got to ask those questions. But he doesn't appear to have been doing any of that.
And he's a man's man. Like, that's what I keep going back to. This is a guy who guys admire. Like, oh, you stepped up for these kids. Like, I get choked up thinking about it. Like, that is a massive thing to do as a single man, bring, because it's going to create problems in your relationships, because they're not like from a previous marriage or anything, but you willingly took them in, and like, I'm their guardian, I'm their parent now, I'm their father. Like, people respect that. So I would find it very hard for somebody to have a beef with him. He sounds like he was a good human being. God rest his soul. You know what I mean? Yeah.
If you can't tie the police in, what is the motive for murder with all of them? And don't tell me it's because the one dude kissed Karen or had it's law enforcement. I mean, the folks sleep with the folks that they sleep with. I mean, really, that is not a motive for murder, not in real life. That is the lamest. If you're going to murder somebody because they just slept with one or two or three people in a police department, you'd be murdering a lot of people.
Yeah, there wouldn't be a lot of law enforcement. Same thing goes with Hollywood. There would be a lot of actors left or people on set left.
Yeah, because it's just like, oh, come on. And that's not a motive for murder. Not that. You know, looseness in the bedroom. No, that is not. It would have to be something else for them to cover up a murder like this.
You know,
and to involve their entire families. I mean, it is not just the police officers, retired, current. We're talking about wives and children. Honey, that's a lot of covering up. That's why I don't think it's a conspiracy that way.
You worked in DHS. You might know my friend. I won't mention him here, his name, but I have a friend who's worked in DHS for 20 plus years. He said he's got this great quote, and he says, the notion of a conspiracy hinges on the fact that those who are perpetuating said conspiracy actually know what they're doing. And so he talks about that with the government. He's like, they can't even fix the copy machine, let alone cover up X, Y, and Z. They can't get my paycheck right sometimes, let alone how are they going to cover up X, Y, and Z? Like, how are they going to keep people from knowing that? It really is. I go back to that a lot. Like, there has to be it has to be, as you said, it has to be so organized, and everybody has to have everything together. And somebody always slips up, as you see in mob movies, and then they just whack the guy. We've all seen Goodfellas, right?
And it is just not likely to involve spouses and children in a law enforcement cover-up of a murder of a man. And Jan had a relationship with him, Jan McCabe, because their children had a relationship with his, his children. It's just a lot to put together. I mean, you've really got to be good on it. And then no one, after all of this time, say anything. Nah, no. It's just not. There's no there that way. Not that way. I think that's weak.
I would concur. And I've said many times, I don't know a lot about this. I'm just diving into it, talking to people like you, talking to people like Mr. Todd McGee, other people. It's very interesting. Then what do you suspect happened? Can you give me an opinion on Team Reed? Like, was there, because I think I read from this guy, Turtle Boy, had done a video where he was talking about the SUV was 62 feet away from John O'Keefe and had to reach 24 miles an hour to hit him to make the impact. And can he back the car up fast enough? It was something to that effect that he was talking about. And I find that interesting. Is that the crux of their 24 miles an hour in the snow seems like a really fast rate of acceleration for an SUV going backwards.
And then you would and when you hit the brakes in the snow, then you would actually spin in the snow as well. And all of that would have been evident. And then the people in the house would have known or heard something because they would have hit something else. You can't, now this is from my car racing days, from a car racing background, and I'm talking about quarter mile stuff. When you think about what happens when you going really fast in snow or water, and how you have to, when you hit the brakes, when you hit the brakes, then the car is going to spin, right? It's going to shift the axle. You're going to spin and usually spin out, which is why you will see individuals, even on a small sheet of ice when it's really cold, you'll see people spinning their wheels and everything, which means the car will then have an impact on something else. So I don't know if she hit him at a rate of speed. What about if they had an argument and something happened prior to getting there, which is why he got all these marks on his arms that you could see, because they were someplace else. In the meantime, he didn't have his jacket on. There was an accident. He was hurt. Maybe they had a physical altercation in the car, and he got out of the vehicle at some point after she drove him there. He got out, and she did back up and hit him. And she was so intoxicated, she didn't realize it. She didn't have to be going very fast, but fast enough. And he wound up on the sidewalk, covered in snow, harmed, but apparently he was still alive. And then she took off and went home. She was very hysterical. Now, I've had 2 husbands and men in my life. Okay. If they didn't come home, or if they didn't come home, suppose they didn't come home, I am not hysterical in the manner in which she seems to be hysterical when she realized that he didn't come home. She is screaming at the top of her lungs. The kids, she wakes up the kids, and her reaction that way is very troubling for me. What she does when she wakes up and finds that he's not there, I find troubling.
Oh, okay. So this is the thing. Again, my knowledge is very limited. So she went back home to sleep it off or whatever, and then discovered that he wasn't there, and then went back to the scene of the crime, or to the 34 Fairview Lane or Road.
She woke up and she was screaming, he's not there. The kids got woken up because she was all frantic. She was on the phone calling Jen. So see, she called Jen to say that John had not come home. She was screaming, where is he? And then she's in the car. She was very erratic for someone because he didn't come home. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's interesting. That's a very strong reaction.
It really is. I mean, he didn't come home. Like, you're hysterical. Like, you're screaming. You're going to look. See, I'm not going to look. That's just me. I'm like, I'm not going to look for you. I'm not going to look. And then it's snowing outside. It's bad weather. And like, why was she panicking that he didn't come? You know, like, he's a grown man.
He's a grown man. He's a police officer. He's a man. He's a dude. You know, he's a father. He's a tough guy. Like, he's a tough guy. You know what I mean?
I'm worried. Like, okay, so the kids are here. All right. I'm here, and the man not here, and I'm freaking out because he's not here. Like, he didn't come home. I don't know whether, for me, that's not normal. I don't know whether all of that hoopla, that is questionable for me. Like, the hysteria, the running out, looking, like, call him. Like, are you not calling him on the cell phone? Like, okay, where the hell you at? Like, where are you? Okay, you don't answer.
Or if you did get into a fight, you know, and you were intoxicated, you're like, I don't care. I'm going back to sleep. You know what I mean? You're just whatever. That is interesting. That's an interesting point. And I'm not aware of this.
Livid, hysterical. And
I heard that she had to be sedated. That's what I read when the paramedics came. They took her to the hospital and she had to be sedated. And you're telling me also she had a high blood alcohol level? So she was already sedated.
High. But when she went to the McCabe's house, she was screaming at the top of her lungs. And he was like, can you tell her to shut the hell up? Because she's going to, like, wake up the neighbors. Like, it was really early. And I'm thinking, that does not, like, why are you that hysterical? Because he didn't come. Like, if he was out cheating, you wouldn't have to call anyone because you would already, and you suspected that. Like, you would either kind of know where to go or you would call people. But I guess some people, I wouldn't call anybody because I'm like at home and like, I got the food, the kids, okay, the car, I'm safe.
It's warm.
It's warm. So I personally did not. I was like, that is a really weird reaction. Now, mind you, they were dating. They were not married. They had been dating for something. I had a husband for like a whole decade. And I'd have boyfriends. And, they didn't come home. They should be watching for me not to come home the following week if you want to play those kind of games. I mean, if that's what we're doing. But yeah. I just was like, is that normal? I didn't think that was normal at all, in my opinion. I was like, and then you're screaming like they're adults. When you're in your 20s, you might be, oh my God, the boyfriend is not coming home. But when you're like real grown.
They're my age. They're grown folk.
Yeah. And she was a professional. And I have heard people say that she is stunning. Now, everybody got their own thing, but I haven't caught that part of it. So I thought he was very handsome.
Yeah, they both are good looking people.
She all right, I thought he was really handsome. They look like a good looking couple.
Yep.
But even though he was very handsome and very fine, he was a police officer. I would not be chasing anyone. And see, when you know people, like they had an argument, like you said, like, okay, we had a fight. He ain't come home.
Yeah. You're not going to think something's happened to him. And I guess she was also saying something to the effect of, I think I hit him, or she was screaming, did I hit him? Did I do this? And where does this whole cell phone thing controversy? There's people got rid of cell phones. There's text messages or Google searches that like, how's long cold, die in the cold or something, body, all this stuff.
Jen McCabe says that Karen Reed said something about Googling, how long does it take for somebody to, die or something in the cold. And that's why that was on her Google search. I know people thought it was like controversial that she Googled that, but I don't know about that. He was found in the snow. She said she didn't know that he was out there, Jen. So she might Google it. I didn't know whether that was such a hysterical, big deal. What I did find a little questionable was the convenience of them getting the two police officers there. State guy, what is his name? Oh, I don't know why I can't think. The two guys that got rid of their phone, the other McCabe and Brian McCabe, and then this other guy. What? Look, I was just on the show. How can? Well, you know who I'm talking about.
Because there was the Higgins, John Higgins, or.
I don't know why I always forget Higgins. So Higgins and McCabe, them getting rid of their phones or whoever.
Do they know each other, Higgins and McCabe?
Yes, they do.
I mean, because everybody knows everybody. It's like saying that is like, it doesn't even make any sense. Of course they all know each other.
So the getting rid of the phones,
which is weird. That's weird.
Well, yeah, because I'm like, what kind of investigations have they conducted when they don't know how evidence and stuff is retrieved and discarded on phone, like even at
and
the
he
base.
Dumped it on he dumped it supposedly on a military base and not in the garbage too, which I thought was strange.
He said he doesn't have garbage pickup at his house. Okay. So he said that it's a pattern in practice, which the military base would have cameras to show whether he was dumping trash regularly on their facility. I don't know if they would be able to get the request, but somebody might be able to look at it. So he said he was dumping it there, dumping the whole phone. A little unusual. I'm thinking, well, what kind of phone did they have? Because and I kept my phones. Like I still have 100 phones because when my granddaughter was really little, the little kids, she making like, I said, call now on your phone because, so, they kind of had the, their little thing. They're playing with the kids' phone. I haven't taken the SIMS card out, but I do understand making sure that the information is cleared, because now I have had a phone where people were calling a number where people were constantly calling me for years because it was someone else's number.
Yeah.
And I didn't change the number though. But I did tell them, look, stop calling me. I told you this person don't have his phone number. So those are dynamics, but the way in which they got rid of the phones, and he said it was his personal phone, not his work phone. So it
seems interesting. It seems interesting.
So
it seems interesting.
That's what I'm wondering if the conspiracy was something else going on with these folks.
And maybe even completely independent of this case. You're thinking there's something.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
They might have been involved in some other stuff that had nothing at all to do with this case.
To do with John O'Keefe or anything. And they may have thought this is the perfect time because, there's such chaos. Just get rid of it, man. We can't get caught cheating on our wives or doing whatever we were doing.
Whatever we were doing, we don't want anybody to know.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect opportunity for not. Because Higgins was
Makes
working
sense to me.
undercover before, and now it came out today that he said he got an inappropriate call that had to do with work on that particular phone, which is why he reported it to his superior. But I'm like, but I thought that wasn't the work phone.
Yeah.
So then why would you get calls on that phone?
Yeah.
Because now when you do what you do and you do it really well, sometimes you have a phone that's not in your name. Like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, you can get this number, but if I called you and you didn't have my name attached, it would come up something else.
Yeah, exactly.
It would come up in the name of somebody that was formerly in law enforcement. Because sometimes you got to move in silence because folks be always trying to find you. But you understand what I'm saying? So it's just like, well, what kind of cops and robbers were y'all playing? And as somebody who has worked with a lot of undercover, my son's father worked undercover narcs for decades. I've gone on some sting operations and I'm like, oh my God, is this what people are doing? So you understand the level of security that you have to have. And when you're in a small town and the things that you have to do, you don't usually do it in that particular town where you are, where you live, work. Where you live and play, you don't necessarily work in the same way. So I don't know if I buy all of this. And it was right before the notice came down to not get rid of your phones. I'm thinking, well, there's a murder. Why would you get rid of your stuff anyway? Like, do you really need a notification not to get rid of your stuff if people are talking about this? And whether it was approved or not, I just think all of that just throws more shade on what is happening. Now, my dear friend, Corey Higgis, who's with a former NYPD, who's on Court TV today, he and I had the same thoughts. There is a federal investigation. I believe I believe the feds, if they are not looking, I would be surprised. They need to be looking at this department, this area, and this case a lot. Because something is ripe.
Something's going on. And they can't blame it on Whitey Bulger. That's for sure. No.
And I said, when people were coming for me, I said, oh, everybody need to be investigated. All of y'all need to be investigated too. All the people that's, people don't understand when you make these little sly remarks and stuff and threats online. And folks then begin to look at you too, sideways. So I always tell people, you need to calm down. Everybody calm down and stop saying things and posting things that you shouldn't post, because then you become the target. All these folks that want to post all of these things that are dangerous, stop saying things, stop posting things, stop targeting people online. Some of these folks, they take things so seriously. Stop doing that, because then you become a target of the people that you don't want to be a target of. And I'm not talking about local police. I'm talking about the feds. They don't have nothing but money and time.
That's very true.
And expertise. You got to think this is a long game.
Yeah,
you and I know what a long game looks like. When you are a survivor of this kind of stuff, you and I know what a long game looks like. It's
we do.
Not those quick resources and people think, oh yeah, well, they've got a couple of dollars and they're going to heal. And therapy costs a lot. And it takes a long time. You can go in and out. You know what I'm saying. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that I had the opportunity to say that particular thing to your audience so others can understand what the facts are. See, evidence and facts and reality matter. So thank you for the opportunity to allow me to say that.
My pleasure. Mike Sonny Slaughter, thank you so much for joining the program. Your insight, I'm having your back. You can't say no. You're not allowed to. You have such a fantastic lens and a perspective on all of this from both sides. My guest today is Sonny Slaughter. She is a law enforcement and litigation expert. You can see her on Court TV, Law and Crime Network, Scripps TV or Scripps News. She not only is she a person who has worked on both sides, but she's also a mother. She's also a survivor, and she's also a grandmother apparently too, right?
Faith, my grandbaby Faith. Yes, my little grandbaby. I'm a nana, yeah.
That's wonderful. Sonny, where can my audience find you?
So, let me turn on my light. I was looking like I was in the dark. Let there be light.
Right.
So they can, across all social mediums, they can just see Sunny Slaughter or The Sunny Slaughter. I'm on Instagram as The Sunny Slaughter. On LinkedIn as Sunny Slaughter. On Facebook as Sunny Slaughter. On X, Twitter as Sunny Slaughter. And I'm the Olivia Pope of Crime is what they call me.
Yes, and you also got to meet Shonda Rhimes. You put that in your thing, which is pretty cool.
Look, another one down. And, Harry, now Shonda. I'm working my way. I met Collier. Yeah, I think I'm famous now.
You're well on your way. That's for sure. I will have links to all of Sunny's social media and her TED Talk, which is very powerful and very inspiring, in the show notes and description of today's episode. Sunny Slaughter, thank you so much for joining the program.
Thank you so much for having me. You are a light and a beacon of hope for so many. I appreciate you.
Thank you. That's very kind. So are you. And we're back. Mover Nation, we get through another one. I see a lot of the comments. I see a lot of what y'all are saying. And look, Sunny is a very well-respected analyst and expert in these fields. I am so honored to have amazing guests like her on this show. And we are all learning. We are all finding out the facts as they unfold. We're trying to have a fair and balanced perspective. I'm here to offer you my unique perspective on true crime, mental health, society, and popular culture, and albeit with a slight sense of humor. Mover Nation, we get through another one. Thank you to all the mods. Thank you to all my channel supporters, Patreon supporters, all that stuff. But hey, you know what there is? There's an outro for this. I'll see you on the next one. Mover Nation, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to all my channel members and Patreon supporters. And for more exclusive content, behind the scenes videos, monthly VIP meet and greets, and watch parties, please consider supporting me on Patreon or by becoming a YouTube channel member. If you like this video, check out this one right here or this one right here. And don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps with the algorithm. On that note, I'm Collier Landry. I'll see you on the next one. Good girl, Marisol. Good girl.